I'm Casey McAllister.
I'm Kevin Schutz.
This is the Beyond Koda podcast.
All right. Cool.
I like your mason jar over there.
You like that? Yeah.
Yep. Dude, you're such a hipster now.
I'm going to put this away then. Yeah, actually Tracy got me into that.
Such a Colorado hipster.
I drink a lot more water if I use this because I can see how much, and it's
okay.
Sense of accomplishment when I empty it. So.
Good job.
Yeah. So, dude, we're already in episode 3.
Episode 3.
Yeah. So, episode 1 was cool. We got a lot of questions from people just about kind of general health and fitness. And the next one, episode 2 was all about me. I did way too much talking. So that was now it's time. I think it's time for you to kind of lead the charge a little bit because
I can talk.
Yeah, you can talk. We decided to do one on nutrition, and again, kind of go back to the viewers and ask them questions that they wanted to hear. And so, nutrition's, definitely like your, it's kind of like a little pride and joy of yours.
I would say so.
You enjoy learning stuff, and if you can use that knowledge to help people, you definitely take advantage of it. So
took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah. Oh, sorry about that.
No, I like it.
Yeah. So what if you back up, why did you actually get into kind of nerding out with nutrition?
Yeah. So. Growing up, props to my parents a little bit, I guess. I do think we ate pretty healthy growing up. We sat down to eat dinner. We had meat and vegetables. They probably let me drink a little bit too much soda and eat a little too much candy. And I did have a sweet tooth. But going into, high school baseball, I was pretty light. I was trying to gain some weight. I was trying to, I started lifting weights about sophomore year of high school. And then going into college, I ate pretty good, I'd say, up until that point. I only drank a few beers in college. Like I would say on average, I would drink 1 or 2 nights a week. Obviously you're having fun with the boys and, all that type of stuff. But then after college, I stopped playing baseball and I stopped really working out for almost about 2 years. And I started, my fun place and my social aspect was going to the sports bar and hanging out with buddies and playing Golden Tee and drinking some beers and I would hang out at the bar was my happy place. And I know that sounds kind of weird to say it like that, but that was where a lot of my friends were. I would be there maybe 4 nights a week, and I would order food there. And then I was working a desk job, and then I would get I would eat a few bagels with cream cheese for breakfast for. My desk job, and then my lunch I would order out. So I'm eating just horrible food. I'm drinking beers, not exercising much anymore. So I played baseball around 195 or 200 pounds. That was a lean 195. And then I got up to about 240 pounds. And I remember stepping on the scale one day and seeing 242. And it happened quick too. I think I hung out around 215, 220 for a long time, maybe a year, and then I got up to 225, a little soft 225 for maybe 6 months, and then all of a sudden I just had a spurt of a few weeks where I just ate like crap, and I saw 242 on the scale. I was like, I gotta do something about this,
dude. It's hard for me to even imagine it because I've known you since you were pretty deep into CrossFit. Yeah. So but at the same time. It's a good example of kind of you are who you surround yourself by, right? So, if you surround yourself by your friends that go to the bar and drink and stuff, you're having a good time, but it's probably not healthy. But now you find enjoyment in a healthy lifestyle. So, and you're pretty much all in on that too. So, you're kind of an all in or all out kind of guy. So
that's me for sure. Yeah.
so a good example there.
I was like, I got to change something. I probably went through 3 months of working out on my own and trying to eat a little healthier, maybe saw little results. And that was when one of my buddies, name's Oz Karup. Maybe if he listens to this, that would be awesome.
Oz Karup. That's a cool name, by the way.
Yeah, his name was Oz. Osman, but he went by Oz. And he's like, dude, bro, we got to try this CrossFit thing. And I'm like, that's stupid. And so he convinced me we got to try it. We started doing some workouts, me and him. We were going on our lunch break. I worked with him. And we went to a CrossFit gym, and I just loved it right away. I kind of knew I would. And so I wanted to get healthy selfishly for myself, and I wanted to, get lean again and feel like an athlete. And then I started diving into, all the nutrition books and podcasts and reading a ton of blogs online for myself. And then I started coaching shortly after I started CrossFit, maybe about 6 months into starting CrossFit. And I wanted to really educate myself, as a coach to try to help as many people as possible because it's fun, and it's cool to be able to say, my story of hey, I was out of shape and, now I'm trying to qualify for the CrossFit Games or whatever and all that type of stuff. So I really geeked out on it. I've probably read I would put it in like the 40s or 50s range of all books of like all different aspects of, not only just, paleo diet, but all about ketogenic diets, vegetarian diets, cholesterol, like really geeked out on some specific subjects. I'm reading one right now about the carnivore diet that like I totally just kind of like push that off to the side, but as I'm reading, I'm like, actually, like this is different than I expected. So tried to educate myself a lot, and then listen to a ton of podcasts, read a lot of blogs, and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I will say selfishly, I pretty much anything I take as far as nutrition stuff is stuff that I've either been a part of with you, that you're talking to somebody, or I overhear you talking about somebody.
Oh yeah,
That's fun. most of my nutrition knowledge is totally just stolen from you. So so if you're right, then I'm right. But if you're wrong, then I'm right. Yeah, so I guess on that note, you definitely have a lot of experience throughout the years working with athletes, and obviously reading a whole bunch of books and studies and stuff. I hear you referencing studies like all the time, and which is cool. Like I was as a business partner and training partner and stuff. It's good to know I can just, hey Kev, what do you think about this? And then I can.
It's always it depends.
Right?
I guess it depends, Casey.
But
here's why.
I guess a little kind of thing we have to say on something like this is we're not doctors. Like this is totally kind of our opinion on stuff, and through personal research, either on ourselves as the kind of the scientific or the science experiment, or stuff our clients have worked through or whatever. We're not doctors, so this isn't anything official other than just an opinion type deal.
What's funny is I listen to a few podcasts, and I listen to a few doctors' podcasts, and they say that. They say like the same thing. They say like, you can't take any of this, you should go. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're a doctor. Like,
that's such a good
It's
point.
kind of funny, but they do that so just for liability.
Maybe we are doctors. I don't know. No, I'm totally joking.
Yeah, and I think expanding on that, whenever you're hearing nutrition advice and you're trying to change something and you're reading about something, you have to realize the author's intent and what product they're trying to sell. So if they're trying to sell some sort of powder or something that they're going to gain off of, you have to take that with a grain of salt. Our intent and what product we're trying to sell is results. Like, I really don't care what the perfect path is for someone to get to their goal. Like, I'd want to know what the path is. And our business is made off of results, is made off of, people seeing those results. So you always have to take that in mind and take that with a grain of salt when someone's trying to sell you something.
Yeah, I mean, the supplement industry is a billion-dollar industry, of course. Yeah. And so, when you think about that, there's a lot of money to be made there. And some people, unfortunately, take advantage of that, and, they put together their study or their experiment, and it shows that their product is amazing, and then they can get some monetary gain out of that. And obviously that's not our goal. We're trying to have fun with podcasts and help people. So
what's funny is, and we're not ruining any questions here, but what's funny is I think I throw people off at the gym sometimes because we stock protein there, and they're like, hey, do I need to take this protein? And I'm like, actually no, like I don't really recommend that you take like I recommend that you get protein from whole animal food or from other sources. But if you're trying to get protein in quickly, or if this is gonna help you get to your protein goals for the day, you should take it, and we're gonna stock like a high quality one here. But I'm like no. They're like, wait a minute.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I mean, I've had that conversation with many people. Like, I mean, it's a great product or whatever, but if you can get it from X, Y, and Z or elsewhere, then awesome, let's do it that way. But it's such a good point. Yeah.
Let's get into some questions.
Yeah, so we have quite a few listener questions, which is great, and then I threw in a couple in here. But let's just start off with kind of I don't want to call it fad, but it's new to me, and it seems like getting some over the last year. It's really grown, at least in my world. So maybe also outside. But what's the deal with intermittent fasting, and is there evidence-based research around it?
Well, first off, it's the opposite of a fad because it's been going on for millennia. Ever since humans first came into existence, they didn't have 3 square meals. Like, it's not like you woke up and you're like, oh, it's breakfast time, I'm going to go kill a deer. Like, you didn't get 3 square meals a day. So I would say it's the exact opposite of a fad, but it's becoming more and more popular. So there is a lot of evidence out there with some really good positives to intermittent fasting. But as I'm going to answer a lot of these questions, you have to take into mind what your goals are. So if someone's trying to lean out, or they're trying to, if they have body composition gains, in regards to losing fat and getting more lean, as opposed to like building a ton of muscle. Those are going to be opposite goals, opposite paths. So we're going to cover that a lot today. Really dive into what someone's goals are and why things would be different. But here's a good example of that. So with intermittent fasting, there's a lot of positives, a lot of evidence-based research out there. Good question, whoever asked this one. So there's some positives that show with longevity, just living longer. There's some positives that show with preventing cancer or helping to prevent the spread of cancer. Go ahead.
It's kind of back up just a little bit. Maybe give like a one line, like
okay, what is
intermittent fasting?
Great question. So intermittent fasting is basically having an eating window that you're going to eat a certain time of day, or so some common examples. We can get into this with you. What's your intermittent fasting routine?
Yeah. So
how many hours would you not eat, and how many hours do you eat?
Yeah. So they call it a 16 and 8 is kind of where you kind of start with. So 16 hours you're fasting, you're not eating.
That's including sleep.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. Just 16 hours, and then I say just, but you can have water there. There's debates on if you can have coffee or whatnot, but overall you're having water and no food, and then 8 hours. So the remainder of that 24-hour window or 24-hour day, 8 hours where you can actually eat. And so that's kind of where I started, and that's where I've been for the most part.
And there's so many examples of it. 16-8. You could do a whole day fast once a week. There'd be different reasons to do both, but it's basically not eating for a certain amount of time and then having a window that you eat in. And so some of the positives there are, helping live longer, helping with cancer prevention and treatment, helping with insulin sensitivity, which I might touch on a lot today. Basically, you're making yourself way more insulin sensitive because not only you're not eating any food, you're not having any carbohydrates there, which can have some positives. Mental acuity. So, I find personally, if I fast or if I'm, just had a little bit of fat, my brain feels like it just functions so much better. A lot of people, say the same thing. And then, you can get a lot of uptick in naturally occurring HGH, so human growth hormone. That sounds awesome for anybody that's in the CrossFit world and wants, to go for performance, but it's really good for body composition and health anyway. You want some human growth hormone. And then lastly, I would say that it can be advantageous for helping with your aerobic system and trying to help your aerobic system as an athlete. So some of the things that I see there and talking to people and seeing how people do this is a lot of times they screw it up because they don't actually get the same amount of quality of food that they would have gotten or the quantity of food that they would have gotten. So some simple examples, I'll have Casey touch on this, but let's say that someone's eating 3,000 calories a day. We're just going to talk about calories, not get super into the weeds. If they have 3 square meals, they're having 1,000 calories, 1,000 calories, 1,000 calories. There's a whole nother approach with like the bodybuilding world likes this a lot. Maybe you have 6 meals and it'll be 500 calories at each meal. Now you could do intermittent fasting, you could skip breakfast, and then you're going to have a 1,500 calorie meal, 1,500 calorie meal. You could even go as far as to only have 1 meal a day and you get all 3,000 calories there. That's just talking about quantity of food. And then there's also quality. I do notice sometimes that people, do this fasting and they only have 1 meal a day. They just crush like crappy food because they are so hungry and they're just like trying to get as much calories in as possible.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. You bring that up because I've personally kind of had the opposite effect of like, well, if I know like, hey, after I get done eating this meal, like I can't eat anything else. I'm like, well, crap, I'm pretty hungry right now, so I'll take the time to make a few more vegetables and stuff like that. But it obviously varies. But I feel like overall, I make it more of an effort to be like, all right, yeah, I need to put some more greens in or some more veggies or whatever. But on your quality / quantity, the quantity aspect is what gets me.
Yeah. Right.
So I've been trying to put weight on for years. So I kind of have the opposite story of Kevin. Like whenever I was 21 or so, I was about 150 pounds and trying to get bigger and stuff. And I've kind of always been trying to climb that weight ladder and trying to put some weight on. But I definitely catch myself. Especially right now where like things are kind of crazy is like, all right, I'll eat whenever and then I might not eat anything for several hours and then I'll eat, my last meal for the day and then, I'm done for till the next day. And it's just like, I think part of it is stress related. I'm not a stressful eater. I'm a stressful not eater. I'm like kind of like
just like focused. You're so focused on what you're doing.
Exactly. Like, all right, food's kind of secondary. And that's kind of how I've always been. I enjoy food, but it's not like it's not like a passion of mine where like, oh man, I can't wait to eat that dessert.
It's a passion of mine.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I can see that.
So quick cliff notes coming from an intermittent faster. I don't know if that's an outcome. Okay. For you, what do you think the positives are? For you specifically.
So You talked about the mental acuity. There's been one time where I actually felt it, and it was crazy. It was awesome. But it was on a day that I actually went. It just happened to be I got busy, and it was like a 1 meal a day thing where I went on like a 22-hour fast or something like that.
You just crushed work,
and I was just like, I was like, all right, well, I need to do that. I need to do that, and I just ended up not eating until. It was like 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and I freaking was. So that was cool. The problem is I only felt it that one time. I haven't really felt it.
Let me prompt you the other way. If you just like crush a bunch of like carbs and bad food, do you feel the opposite, like sluggish or anything, or do you feel invigorated by that?
So I can't say as it relates to intermittent fasting because I haven't felt that, but. Yeah, we might talk about it later. Whenever I was used to be eating a crap load of carbs, like over 500 a day, definitely felt sluggish, like all the time, and I was not fasting at all. I will say
you are very carb tolerant as a person. Yeah. So you're on the extreme end of the spectrum, and you still felt a little sluggish off of it.
For sure.
So, and sometimes the mental acuity aspect is just the lack of not crashing. If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That was number one.
I would say a benefit for me is I don't got to worry about eating breakfast. And for me, it's like, all right, if I'm coaching in the morning, or even if I'm not coaching in the morning, generally, when everything's running normal, I'm up by 6 o'clock, and then I kind of hit the ground running. And then on days I'm coaching, I'm up at 4:15, and getting out the door, like I don't know, I just don't have to eat breakfast, which is great. But then I kind of just I know that I'm going to eat 2 or 3 meals a day instead of like throughout the day, and so I'm a little bit more cognizant of what I'm eating. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, like for whatever reason, I'm like, all right, well, I'm only eating 2 or 3 meals. I need to try to eat some more food, and I need to try to make sure I'm having more, micronutrient stuff. I don't get off into the weeds as far as like, like how much protein and fat and stuff. It's more like kind of.
But you have done that before in the past.
I have.
So
done
you
that
have
of
an
course.
idea. So you have an idea.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which is what I recommend to a lot of people is like you don't have to track every single day unless you want to. But at least you have an idea. When you're eating, you probably have a guess, and it's probably somewhat accurate.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Totally fair.
Any negatives? For you specifically.
Well, so the negative is if I use right now as an example because of everything that's going on, but like food isn't, my intake of food isn't like my primary goal. So it's really easy for me to be like, oh well, I'm just not going to eat at this time, and that's within my window and blah blah blah. So anyway, my quantity of food goes down. So it's easy for me to have a lower quantity. Now I can see a lot of people that being a benefit to them. It's like
exactly. And to wrap that up, intermittent fasting, and this goes with a lot of things. It might not be best for gaining the most muscle or weight. It might not be best for optimal performance, but optimal performance might not be best for longevity and health. So. I would say it's good for longevity, health, mental acuity. Maybe not great for optimal performance, depending on what your goals are.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So just to wrap that up.
Yeah, I like it. So kind of along those same lines, do you think not eating after a certain time in the evening is helpful? And anything to elaborate on that?
Yeah. So good question. Whatever listener asked that. Two examples again. It depends on your goals. If you are trying to gain weight. Maybe eating at night is going to be helpful, like with the Casey example, if he's skipping breakfast and he's trying to get as much good quality food but a good quantity in. Having an extra meal at night is going to help him get a little bit more in if he's trying to gain muscle. But if you are trying to lean out and you're going for body composition gains, then trying to limit the snacks before bed is probably best. And the only reason I say that is because of usually the quality goes down. If you're like sitting in front of the couch watching Netflix, like you're probably going to be eating like cereal and ice cream. You're probably not like crushing an avocado and like some vegetables and a good piece of meat. Like this is a good Netflix show. Ooh,
that is such a good point. Like I would never be like, man, I'm gonna go make me a nice salad to go with this. This movie. Like,
I can't wait to binge watch and eat a salad. Like I don't think that goes together. So if your goals are body composition, health, I would have dinner if you're doing that and disregarding the intermittent fasting. But after that, probably limit the time before bed. But that being said, there's not really substantial data. Like you could have a little bit of data that says that it's bad to have certain foods or certain quantity foods right before bed. It's not going to make a huge difference. What's making a huge difference is the total calories throughout the day, the quality, and the macronutrients. Yeah.
So basically, kind of wrap that up. Like if you're having a snack at night, let's say you want to have some water, or you want to have
wow,
or
great snack, Casey.
Yeah.
Can you tell why you haven't gained a lot of muscle? I want to have some water for my snack.
I'm offended by that statement. I'm up like 25 pounds from back in the day.
We should talk about that.
But I mean, it basically kind of goes back to kind of eating around your goals, like you said, and then also the quality of what you're putting in your body. So, like, if you're eating, candy bars before to bed, you probably expect some negative results in a number of ways. Kind of along the opposite of that. So, like, we talked about at night, but another question from the listeners is, what is your opinion on fasted cardio in the mornings?
I think it can be really good for specific goals. So if you are trying to lean out and you are, trying to go for body composition gains, then doing fasted cardio, meaning not eating before you do some cardio work, is going to help you burn some good fat. The downside of that is you might be way hungrier throughout the rest of your day. So, kind of testing that out, see how you feel. In regards to performance, you can really force your body to be a little bit more aerobic and be better at burning fat and oxygen for energy by doing fasted cardio. So what that would look like is, maybe some low-level activity. Maybe you're going on a nice, easy jog. Maybe you're doing rowing, biking, ski erg, even like, jump ropes, step-ups, like plank holds. Like just really low-level activity is going to make you in an aerobic state where you're not like burning that muscle glycogen, burning that sugar. So I think it can be good for some specific goals like that to try to gain in your aerobic system. I found really good success over the years. When I first started CrossFit, I was powerful and strong because I was a little bit heavier and I trained that, but I had no cardio whatsoever, no aerobic system. So I tried to really force my body into not burning muscle glycogen, into burning more fat and oxygen for energy. But I would go a step further, is it doesn't have to be completely fasted. So, I found success off of having, some fat and still getting the same progress. I found success off of even having a little bit of protein. There is a system in the body called gluconeogenesis that your body turns protein into carbohydrates, into muscle glycogen. So you could refill your muscle glycogen from protein, but it's not a quick process. So you could have protein and it would still keep you in that in that aerobic state when you're doing some cardio in the morning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the only reason why I comprehend everything you're saying is because I've heard this numerous times over the years. So kind of for me to break it down, kind of like what you're saying basically is fasted cardio, you can see some benefits depending on your goals. But the main thing is that you are staying in an aerobic state.
Yes.
And by aerobic state, we oftentimes think like aerobic is like, running a marathon. Like, like that would be an aerobic athlete. But whenever they run a marathon, they're not aerobic necessarily the whole time. They probably get pretty deep.
Definitely
so
not.
Staying in that kind of somewhat lower heart rate, you get a sweat going, but when you get done, you're totally fine. And I think that's the big takeaway is you stay aerobic while you're doing it.
To dive into that a little further, everyone always wants cut and dry. Like, you're not actually aerobic. Like, you're not 100% aerobic and only burning fat for energy. The body goes to the liver glycogen first, so you're storing liver glycogen. I'm just guessing from the data that I've seen. I haven't done the actual pulling from, but for your body size and athletics, I would say that you store about 40 to 50 grams of liver glycogen in your liver. I'm just pulling that out of thin air, but from what I've seen in the literature, I don't
Right.
After you've burned through that, then your body is going to go to your muscle glycogen. But when you've slept, 8 hours, 9, 10 hours, you've probably burnt through that liver glycogen already. So your liver is depleted, and then your body would have to go to your muscle glycogen next. So it's just going to be more likely if you do an aerobic workout, if everybody does an aerobic workout in the morning, that you're going to be burning more fat for energy. It's good to train that system, and it teaches your body how to use that.
Gotcha.
But it's never cut and dry. You're still using a little bit of muscle glycogen. If you try to go harder and you're in a fasted state, you're just not going to have as much glycogen to pull from. So it's just going to kind of force your body into that.
I've definitely had some success with. Some of my athletes have had some success with fasted cardio. Some of them, especially the high powerful athletes, man, fasted cardio will lean them out pretty fast. Now, the less explosive athletes, maybe from a training perspective, but a body composition, I haven't seen quite the same.
And I've seen the argument the other way, because people will say that no, it's not about what you've eaten, and it's not about if you're fasted. It's about the intent of the workout. So, for example, for you can run. You freaking run under a 5-minute mile probably. Let's say that you run a 5-minute mile. If you're running a 7-minute mile or a 10-minute mile that's going to be so easy for you. Whereas it might not matter if you're fasted or not. If you're running a 10-minute mile, you're going to be pretty aerobic.
Yeah.
So what I do think the fasted cardio does is it forces that explosive athlete into going easier because they just can't go harder.
That makes sense.
So whether or not it's the actual mechanism of being fasted or you're forcing yourself into a lower intensity, either way, you've accomplished what we're trying to accomplish there.
I like it. And I think I'm pretty sure we're going to talk here shortly kind of about that explosive versus less explosive athlete. So real quick, let's touch on question here from listener, sleep hygiene ideas. So thoughts on melatonin as a sleep supplement. Just real quick, touch on that. I know you talk about the circadian rhythm a lot and kind of like the downsides of taking melatonin as a supplement versus maybe some benefits.
Yeah, so this is one thing we didn't touch on intermittent fasting, and it's very similar, is when you're doing intermittent fasting, at first it doesn't go well. Like you're freaking hungry when you were used to eating that time. And it's your hunger hormones that we're trying to regulate their leptin and ghrelin, which is the hunger and satiety hormones that tells your body when it's full or when it's hungry. Well, it's going to take a little bit for your body to adjust to that. And then once it adjusts, it's fine. Like you're not hungry at that time of day because your body's not used to eating it. Now, when we talk about sleep, that's the main, like the overarching theme there is that you need to get yourself in a good rhythm, a good circadian rhythm every single day. But it takes a little bit of time, and it takes your body to adjust and getting used to that. So I actually have this PDF that I created. It's just called Sleep Suggestions that I send out to a lot of our members whenever they ask about best practices for sleep, or whenever they just kind of bring up. Actually, they don't bring it up to me. I usually bring it up to them. They're like, Kevin, I'm not getting my body composition progress, and like I feel like I'm eating really well. I feel like I'm working out hard. And then my next question is like, well, how do you sleep? They're like, no. I asked you about like nutrition. I'm like, well, how do you sleep? They're like, well, I sleep like 4 hours a night or 5 hours a night. And well, what they really tell me is they see like 6 hours, but that means 4 hours probably.
They're in bed.
So we kind of switch gears, go off on a tangent, and I'm like, all right, well, let's talk about sleep first. That's going to be really important. So I have this whole big PDF. I'm not going to go through every single aspect of it, but the whole theme of it is trying to regulate your circadian rhythm. So what I mean by that is first thing in the morning, what time do you wake up? 7 a.m.?
That'd be pretty late.
No more.
That'd be pretty late.
No more morning classes anymore. Not waking up at 4:30.
Yeah. Right now, I'm waking up like 7. So
let's say that Casey wakes up at 6:30 a.m. His cortisol has already started to release before he's even woken up, and then the reason he wakes up is because his cortisol wakes him up. So we want that cortisol to peak a few hours after you're awake, and then we want it to start to die off. Now it's an inverse relationship in your body. The melatonin production and serotonin, the precursors to the sleep hormones, go up at night, and then should peak, when you're getting really good deep sleep in the middle of the night, and then start to level off in the morning. So we want those two hormones to be exactly opposite. So everything that we talk about with sleep is trying to regulate that circadian rhythm to be able to release cortisol only when you want to be awake, and then release melatonin when you want to be asleep. So when people take like a melatonin supplement, I do think I will say the only positive, I think, is to try to regulate that sleep cycle and to try to force your body into the correct sleep cycle. But all you're doing is covering up the fact that you're still releasing cortisol and other stress hormones while you're asleep.
Would that deplete natural melatonin production, I assume?
Yeah. So the issue is, it's not like there isn't data showing that it's bad to ingest melatonin, but what I am saying is there's still probably a lot of cortisol being released in that person that doesn't sleep well at night. So you're kind of just covering up the problem. To say that like it's like you've had too many beers and you're trying to put caffeine in your system to sober you up. Like it's not going to get rid of the alcohol in your system. You can take a cold shower, but like you're just covering up the fact that you have that in your system.
So kind of back up.
But it can force you into that correct circadian rhythm by taking melatonin at night, and then hopefully you start to downregulate the cortisol at night and start to upregulate the melatonin.
Gotcha. So cortisol and melatonin pretty much opposite molecules.
Yeah.
And then we want to have an opposite relationship, an inverse relationship.
It just happens naturally in the body. If you're releasing cortisol, you're not releasing melatonin. Opposite, vice versa.
And then cortisol levels can be influenced based on a number of things.
Yes.
Right. So what are some things that would increase your cortisol level that would ultimately be potentially a bad thing if it's not regulated?
So something that people hear about but I think don't implement correctly is light is so important. So you want to get a lot of natural light first thing in the morning, around like lunchtime and stuff like that, and then you want to limit the light at night. So that's like, oh yeah, that makes sense, Kevin. Like, but then you see people that are on the laptop, when they're going right before bed, or that are staring at their phone right before bed, that are watching TV, any sort of light is going to mess with your natural hormone release, natural melatonin release, and tell your body, oh wait, like it's daytime. When humans were first evolving, there was no phones, and there was nothing to mess with them. So the sun was the only thing that signaled your body when it was time to be awake and when it was time to be asleep. So getting as much natural sunlight as possible. Caffeine is so confusing, and I talk about this with people. There's this cool study that showed the half-life, so how long it took for you to remove half of, let's say you ingested 300 milligrams of caffeine, how long it took for your body to get down to 150 milligrams. So for some people, it was like 2 to 4 hours. For some people, it was like 48 hours.
Golly.
And so that just kind of goes to show, you got to test things out. As a general recommendation, I tell our members and clients that the first half of the day is the only time you should have caffeine. Anytime that you're in the PMs, like if you're at noon or 1 p.m., you should probably not have caffeine past then. So that's some big stuff. Besides that, nutrition definitely can affect a lot of this stuff. So we don't need to dive into all those specifics because there's a lot of specific recommendations. But eating a healthy diet that's got some healthy protein, some healthy fat, and lots of micronutrients is the simplest way to put it.
So if somebody wanted that PDF, could they reach out to
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I meant to mention that.
Cool. So
feel free to mention it. Yeah, or contact us and we'll...
Yeah, just reach out anywhere that you can contact Koda Iron View.
One other side note, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. One other side note is, everyone's heard of like fight or flight state. So that's that stressed out cortisol state. So all these things we talked about is going to help you at night be in that rest digest state. That parasympathetic state. And so some of the other things that it sounds kind of like, hippie-ish, but breathing meditation, like any type of meditation, whatever you find to be meditative. I find reading to be meditative. A lot of times I'll read like 20 pages and I'll just be like so exhausted. I'm like, all right, it's time to go to sleep, shut the book. So whatever you find to be meditative, whether that is actually doing meditation or, some other aspect is also really, really good.
That's a really good point. Yeah. For some people it's relaxing, certain things are relaxing, other people gets them all fired up,
Yeah.
If I was to read like Lone Survivor, I'd probably just
I
just get fired
up. I agree,
up.
depending on the book. And man, I was reading this book. It's like 300 pages, all about cholesterol numbers.
That'll put you to sleep.
It's been so hard. It was so hard to get through. I would read like 5 pages, and it'd be time to go to bed. I got better sleep during that time when I was reading that book.
So this is just a question for me. I gotta ask this, and I'm expecting like a one-line answer, but we'll see. Sleep versus diet, which is more important?
It's so much better for the audience if I'm polarizing, but it's hard to be. Obviously, both are important. I would say it's probably a sliding scale. Like if you told me that you're like, I'm eating like 80% good, but I'm sleeping 3 hours a night, I'd be like, dude, you need to sleep more. Like, who cares what you're eating? If I had to choose one, I might say sleep though. I think that if
I would not have expected that answer.
Really?
Yeah.
I think that if you are getting really good deep sleep, you can deal with slightly crappier nutrition. Whereas if you're eating perfectly and you're not getting good sleep, like so when we look at it in that regard, but I'm not telling anybody that they can
eat whatever
the hell they want as long as you sleep really well. You're good.
On that note, I can personally say that whenever I was a police officer and the schedule was crazy and man, just that lifestyle, and especially whenever I was on the streets working afternoon shift, and then we had an academy going on, so we get up at like 5 a.m. and train them, and then I was doing my own training. Yeah, I slept like crap, and I actually was eating at least the right quantity of food for a while. But yeah,
I gotta tell a story.
Okay,
tell a story. All right. This doesn't sound weird. I think we've slept. We've shared in a hotel room three times since I've known you. Okay, I have to tell one story. So we were visiting Denver. It was Toby's bachelor party. It was a very large California king size bed. So we were on opposite sides of it, mind you. So I wake up once in the middle of the night, and I turn over and I see Casey, and he's sleeping like this.
Just if you're listening, it's
if you can't see my eye, if you're listening, my eyes are open, my arms are crossed, I'm on my back, looking up at the ceiling, eyes wide open, and I think I even went, Casey, Casey. I was like, "Are you okay?" So he was asleep. He was sleeping with his eyes open. I thought that was just a saying. Okay, and then I fall back asleep. Right, this is the same night.
I remember this part.
Same night. You remember this? Okay.
Yep.
So this I think we might have left a window or something open, and this large door just slams shut. I wish that I had a stopwatch and a video of this. Probably like 2.6 seconds. Ready? If you're watching the video, here it was. Slam! Clear. Like, had checked the hallway for threats. And then, like, he, like, got back into bed, and by that time I was like, what's going on?
I'm like, everything's good, Kev. Go back to sleep.
Anyway, the whole reason to tell that story is he was very, very fight or flight at all times. It's no wonder, you had some tough time sleeping. It's no wonder that you had a tough time building muscle.
Yeah, cortisol levels were super high for sure. And I remember, like, constantly you were like, dude, you gotta sleep more. Dude, you gotta, lower your cortisol.
I don't think you believed me.
And I'm like, all right, I get what you're saying, Kev. But how the hell do I do that? And two, like, it can't make that big a difference. So now stepping back, like, not to be, I don't know, I guess negative, but it's no wonder that, law enforcement, military, fire, EMS, nurses, even, that have weird schedules and high stress jobs, no wonder, like, they tend to be kind of like either overweight or have unhealthy habits, trying to do whatever they can to kind of like curb that stress. Like, it's you hear it all the time, but whenever you feel it, it's like, I'm really fortunate that at least my release was to, like, go work out with a positive group of people around me, so that it kind of like distracted me from it. And I mean, when I was in it, you're kind of blinded by it. You don't really notice it. But I got to be honest with myself. Like, obviously there was crap going on, and now I step away, and there's obviously everybody has stress in their life, but it's totally different on this scale. And then also, like, just in general, being from my experience being in law enforcement tends to be very negative mindset in general, because you see crap. Yeah. But then also the people you work with, like, some of them are super hard chargers, and some of them are just get wrapped up in the negativity. So, like, that just compounds on it. But yeah, definitely. I guess that the original question was sleep versus diet, which is more important. I guess diet can affect your sleep, and then your sleep can affect how your diet
can make
affects you.
If you're not sleeping as much, you're going to be craving crappier foods, all that type of stuff. And two, man, I didn't even think about this till now, till we're talking about it. I was the other end of the spectrum where I slept really well, and I just like felt like that was true, that I that was helpful and all that stuff. And then I experienced it about 14 months ago when Beckett was first born, and I was a new dad. Is like, I experienced what sleeping 5 hours a night in 60 to 90 minute increments is like, and I had the easy job. I mean, I didn't have to. Yeah. I had got up and rocked him, and I was woken up, but my wife Liz was the one feeding him, and so and then I noticed it was crazy. So I felt like my performance didn't drop at all for like 3 months. And so like, and I've told that to people many times when I'm talking to people about nutrition and cortisol and sleep and all that. It's like, you can get away with it for a while. And I was like, man, I got this. Like I can still be a good athlete. Like, I can be a dad. I guess I only need 5 hours of sleep a night. And then, like, all of a sudden, maybe about 2.5, 3 months in of not sleeping, it was like whack. Like, oh my god! Like, it just hit me, and I just like ran out of gas. Yeah. And so now he's been sleeping great for the last like 6 months. And so, I mean, just ever since that time when he started sleeping, and like, I just noticed a difference. So I saw the other end of the spectrum. I'm not saying that the stress was the same as like being a police officer or anything like that, but I just was getting woken up all the time, and you're always kind of sleeping with one eye open, like, is that baby still breathing? I hope he's okay. Oh my god!
I can't imagine. Yeah, that's an interesting alternate perspective, because I'm sure a lot of people have experienced that and can relate to it. So
you can get away with it for a little bit, not very long though.
So you tell a funny story about me. So our next question is from a listener: how many 2 for $20 meals from was it Chili's?
Yeah, it's Chili's.
Yeah, does it take for Kevin to say, quote, "I'm full"? Well, I guess real quick, is it just one 2 for $20, or do you have you ever gotten two for $20? Have you ever gotten two for $20s on your own?
No, but I'm pretty sure I've eaten a 2 for $20, and then also some of Liz's meal that she didn't finish. So to preface that, like, I do work out a lot. I'm a little bit higher metabolism from having higher muscle. I eat a lot of food, but go ahead.
That is a good point. He doesn't get like the nachos as one meal, and then the quesadillas as the other meal. He gets like the steak, and then like
the steak and the broccoli and the chicken and the broccoli. Yeah. So back off, everyone.
Or he'll get like the burger with a lettuce wrap, and I'm like, come on, what are you doing? So I can't tell you how many times I've gone out to eat with Kevin. and he's got that menu out, and the waiter or waitress comes over, and
it's a good strategy here.
And he's got kind of like those puppy dog eyes, and he looks up at the waiter or waitress and just goes, "I'm sorry, I'm really hungry." And the funny thing is, it's not like that's one time that's happened. Every time we go out to eat, he says,
I feel like I'm being judged.
And then he proceeds to order either 2 meals, or he always says, "All right, hey, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at this. Which one has more food?" And then he goes based on that. So,
it's a good strategy right there.
Every time. And I've gotten to where now I just call him out in front of the waiter or waitress and say, "Kev, you can't say I'm really hungry every time." But it is funny. So next time you go out to eat with Kev, make sure you pay attention to that.
I just feel judged.
So kind of along those same lines, another listener question. How much does one cheat meal a week mess with your progress?
I think you have to look at it and be really self-aware what your habits are and like what affects you. So I've seen it both ways. So I'll give you an example. There's 7 days in a week. Let's say that someone's eating 3 meals a day. They're not fasting. If you're having 21 meals in a week and you have 20 healthy meals that you're crushing it, you're hitting everything perfectly, and you're looking forward to that one cheat meal per week, then I think that's great. I've seen people be able to like be really, really strict and like hit perfect, macronutrients and very quality food because they're just looking forward to that one cheat meal. But I've also seen it the other way where it's like, okay, they have that one cheat meal and then the next day they're like, that was really good, I'm gonna have another. The next day, I'm gonna have two, and then eventually they're just eating super, super crappy, maybe even worse than they were before. So I think you have to be self-aware and know what's going to help you with your progress and what's going to hurt you, because people are totally different. Sometimes hitting very specific macronutrients and having a diet, people crush it, and then if they have one cheat meal, it's just going to hit them off the edge. But sometimes people need to look forward to like, I'm going to have that bad meal and it's going to taste amazing.
For me, like I'm definitely more of the approach of like, if I want something, I'm going to eat it. But within reason, like everything. Like if I want to do a certain workout, well then I'm going to do it. If I want to have a certain level of training volume, I'm going to do it, but within reason, And you got to kind of pay attention to how your body reacts. I feel like
I'm the opposite.
Oh really? You need structure, or what do you?
Yeah. Mean? Well, I can't see it. If I see it, I'm going to eat it, and I will. I have no self control. Like if we have the crappy food in our kitchen, like we're gonna.
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat it.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty similar on that. What is your go-to cheat meal?
Go-to cheat meal. Honestly, like I'm gonna give the bad answer and the good answer. The bad answer no one wants to hear is like my favorite meal is I want a really good steak and like a sweet potato is like my favorite meal. But like cheat meal, I just love cereal. I don't know why. I love cereal.
I've heard that. Actually.
And I want to like I eat one bowl and I'm like I need another. I'm gonna eat like a whole box.
Is it Captain Crunch with berries?
Dude, there's so many choices.
There's so many choices. What is that one?
I mean, Captain Crunch with crunch berries. I think you have to have crunch berries.
Yeah. I feel like I've seen Liz either talk about it or post about it or something about like, all right, I'm gonna get him a box of Captain Crunch with berries. Like
it usually only lasts a day if it, and then it's like, oh, my stomach.
Well, then that could just be a cheat meal if you just eat it, in one setting.
Yeah. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Ooh. Some like chocolate stuff, Cocoa Pebbles, Count Chocula. Those are all great choices.
Cereal, that's interesting. Like it's not like
what
ice
about
cream.
You?
Oh, ice cream, man! I love ice cream. Milkshakes, actually, to be particular. Milkshakes
doesn't do it for me.
Oh, love it. But I also, if I want pizza, I'll eat pizza. But I will say, I gotta agree with you. Like, if somebody was like, "Hey, I'm gonna make you whatever meal you want," dude, a great steak with some potatoes, and I will say, I would like some sweet tea with it, probably. But
I like sweet tea.
Oh, man, I love sweet tea. But yeah, dude,
I like a little bit of flavor, but not too much.
I could have it with water and be totally fine. Like that sounds amazing.
Do you always drink water?
No, but I mean, I don't. I recently I've been drinking a lot of liqueurs or whatever they are.
LaCroix?
Yeah.
Are you sure you're not drinking like the French version of Coors?
Yeah, exactly.
Liqueurs.
It's kind of like a beer,
I think it's LaCroix.
Okay, I've been drinking a lot of LaCroix.
I love those LaCroix memes. Have you seen any of those?
No.
It's like LaCroix tastes like someone yelled out the name of a fruit from the other room while you were drinking soda water.
Maybe it's because I don't drink like many like actual sodas, but they're like super sweet to me.
LaCroix tastes like someone burped after they ate a piece of fruit in your face. There's like so many things. You gotta look them up. Liz always gives me crap because I like to drink Like I'll do like 80-90% water, and then just a little bit of like kombucha or a little bit of like something or juice or anything like that. Mostly kombucha.
I've seen you do that with O2s a lot.
Oh yeah, water it down.
Yeah.
I don't like it super sweet. I like a little taste though.
Oh man, yeah. See, you're not all in or all out. You can be in the middle.
I think just from eating healthy things, when you have sweet things, it tastes ridiculously sweet.
So this next question.
We can make it quick.
Yeah, let's try to make it quick. All right. So ideal macro percentages for a high NME athlete versus a low NME athlete. And I guess we should probably touch on real quick, what does NME stand for?
So good. I like this question. It brings up some really good conversation, and I'll keep it quick. So NME stands for neuromuscular efficiency. So it's basically, if you take, I'm going to give opposite examples, like take a 100-meter sprinter as compared to a marathoner. Both running, but obviously they look different. They're different types of athletes. The high neuromuscular efficiency athlete is the runner that can fire all of his muscle fibers.
So the 100-meter sprinter.
The 100-meter sprinter can fire a lot of muscle fibers very quickly and really exhaust that muscle super quickly. The low NME athlete actually doesn't want to fire their muscle fibers all at the same time. Take a marathoner, they want to just kind of grind through it nice and slow. It's kind of cool with you and I, where we're giving a lot of these speeches together, is we are opposite athletes. So I was always that high NME athlete that was explosive, but I got tired real quick. Casey was always that low NME athlete that was a little bit more grindy, more endurance-y. It's a whole nother discussion whether or not that was as a result of our training, that we like trained our bodies into being that way, or whether we were genetically predisposed to be that way. My experience has always been that you can at least improve what you're bad at. So there's you always should train what you're bad at if you're trying to be a balanced athlete, but whether or not it's genetics or whether it's training history, yet to be proven. I don't know if it'll ever be proven. Side note, I did see a cool study where it was like twins. One was like a explosive athlete, played explosive sports, and one was a marathoner. It might have been triathlete, marathon, I'm not sure. But they actually had way different amounts of fast twitch and slow twitch muscle fibers, even though they were identical twins, which is cool.
Yeah, so that would yeah. And I think you and I are a good example. I mean, I definitely feel like I've trained more to be, somewhat of a have some more fast twitch stuff, and you've trained to be a little bit more aerobic and grindy, and over the years, naturally though, like on a long grindy like hero workout, they kind of a little bit more my way, and then powerful like assault bike sprint, I'm probably never going to catch you, but we've closed the gap some over the years.
And I think that we got that way not only from training but also from nutrition history.
Yeah.
So I would always try to lift a ton of heavy weights and be very explosive, and I ate a lot of carbs to do that. So I would have a lot of carbohydrates, I would be fueled by muscle glycogen, and just try to be as strong, as explosive as possible. And I know that you did have a lot of carbs, but I think you were also high cortisol, and it kind of forced your body into being grindier and more endurance-y. So the fact of the matter why we dove into all that is you can kind of adjust the type of athlete you are and help your training if you're trying to attack a weakness by your nutrition. So I don't want to get into the very specific percentages, because you also can be one end of the spectrum, where you can be kind of closer to the middle on whether you're explosive or grindy, because it's never going to be where like everyone explosive is like way over here on one end of the spectrum, everyone that's grindy, low NME is way over here on the other end of the spectrum. It's going to be kind of a blend. So if you want to try to go from being an explosive athlete to more of an endurance-y athlete, I would say to limit the carbohydrates in training. That is very, very important before people jump down my throat. In training, limit the carbohydrates. Then, when you get close to competition, you can put those carbohydrates back in, knowing that you've pushed your body to be more aerobic, you've pushed your body to be better at burning fat and oxygen for energy. So if, for me, being an explosive athlete, I'm trying to be better at burning fat and oxygen for energy, what should I eat? Probably a little bit more fat. For you, try to be explosive and powerful, what do you think you should eat?
More carbs.
Probably more carbs. And then both of us should probably have protein because of the demands of our sport, have a decent amount of protein. So we don't need to dive into the very specifics of that, but you can adjust one way or the other. And what I've always found for myself personally, being an explosive athlete, if I have a lot of carbs, my body's like, oh yeah, let's burn this stuff. Let's do it.
You get hot.
I get hot. So if I'm my nutrition recently has been a ton of carbs, then I'll get hot quicker.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that.
And keep in mind, training versus competing. I can always bring those carbs back in to compete.
Sure.
And even as far as CrossFit goes, you do a weekend competition, let's say a big competition is 3 days. There's going to be at least 6 events. I actually am not going to have carbs, like before the first event because I don't want to get too hot quick the first event. So I'm going to, have the carbs as the weekend goes on and when my body needs to use that.
That's a good point. Yeah, I like that a lot. Ultimately, like almost all of these nutrition stuff kind of goes back to like, what's your goals?
Yeah.
What are you training for? And understanding what certain nutrition things do to your body, and then also in general to kind of the public, and then knowing yourself as an athlete. There's a big difference between talking about low enemy, high enemy. If you're not competing, well, then you're talking about health, general health.
And that really identifies with the way that my brain works. Is I hate when we get into nutrition talks and you're just like, well, it's different for everybody. Because I don't want to make a sweeping statement, but I don't want to just be like, well, it's different. You know what I mean? I want to be like, well, why is it different? And then what examples would tell you to eat a certain way or not eat a certain way? So, I try to get into like why there are certain aspects.
I like it. Let's skip down to this one.
Yeah, that's along the same. It's gonna be quick.
Yeah. So a pretty detailed question here from one of the from some listener. What percentages of each macro is appropriate for recomping? I am aware of the AMDRs, but is your recommendation different?
Okay, so this listener referenced the AMDRs. That's the acceptable macronutrient distribution range. So basically, how much protein, how much fat, how much carbs you should have, and what that range is. I don't want to call this out too much, but I think it's kind of a cop out / BS. So when you look at the acceptable macronutrient ranges, like protein, for example, they say 10 to 35%. That is a ridiculous range. Most people should probably fall into the 10 to 35% range. We were talking before this. When I did the math, mind you, again, I have a little bit higher metabolism from doing a lot of training and having a little bit more muscle tissue, but I probably eat around 5,000 calories a day, close to that. If I take 10 to 35% of my calories from protein, that's a range of 120 grams to 437.
So it's a fairly large range.
That is quite a bit of a range. So, with protein, it's kind of a cop-out. It's I think I should fall in that 120 to 437 gram range. That's not very helpful for what I should eat day to day, though. So what I do disagree a little bit on is the fat and carbs range. So they give 20 to 35% for the fat range, and then 45 to 65% for the carbs range. So I will say that for athletes and high-performing athletes, I do actually agree with this, but for the general public, I would not put them at 45 to 65% of their calories from carbs, especially the types of carbs that most people eat. It's not like they're eating, they're not getting 65% of their calories from vegetables.
Yeah. I guess if somebody was doing that, if they were having 65% of their carbs coming from leafy greens, veggies, stuff like that. I still
think it'd be negative. It wouldn't
it
wouldn't be as bad as if they're getting it from crappy grains and pasta and sugar.
Right. It's still
it's still going to cause a lot of insulin spiking and have some negative side effects to that. Mainly, keep in mind what we were talking about with the muscle glycogen. When you're burning muscle glycogen, you're effectively burning carbs.
Right.
So a high-performing athlete might go through a lot of carbs there, and they need to replenish that muscle glycogen. Now, if they replenish way over what they've burnt, those carbs are going to turn into fat, basically, to put it simply. Through different processes in the body, that's going to be stored as energy and fat. So the general public, they're not burning that much muscle glycogen if, very, very minimal. So I don't like the 45 to 65% of carbs for that reason, because with the same example that we gave, that puts me at 560 grams to 800 grams a day. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's a lot of calories. That puts me for fat at 100 to 200 grams. So I would disagree a little bit. I would say depending on your goals, depending on your athletic makeup and how much you train, you could bump that fat up a little bit for the general public and bump down those carbs a little bit with the percentage. I like the protein range, but I would go a little bit more specific, which I think we're going to get into anyway.
Awesome. You want to go back up to the protein question?
That could be real quick.
Okay, so just real quick, is there a ceiling to the amount of protein in grams your body can absorb in one meal? And then also protein requirements per day, timing as far as post-workout, and protein before bed. So kind of all things protein, how much can we take in a meal, and timing.
So there's a lot of studies and data that have tried to address this. And I say tried because there's just like a very minimal difference between if you get exactly 30 grams of protein or 40 grams of protein after a workout as compared to 60 or 20. There's a very minimal difference. What usually matters more is the amount that you get in a certain day. Let's go back to that gluconeogenesis example where your body can turn protein into muscle glycogen. So I like to say about a gram per pound of body weight per day is a good starting point. So how much do you weigh, Casey? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I'm gonna give myself a little bit. I'm gonna say 170, even though this
170. That's a good round number
this morning.
So I'd say a good starting point is 170 grams, of protein per day, since you weigh 170. So that's in pounds, not kilos. Keep in mind. If we have any other listeners in other countries. So I would say that that's the minimum that Casey needs with his amount of training and his amount of like muscle breakdown. But since his body can turn protein into muscle glycogen, let's just get a little extra just to make sure that you're topped off. So I would say maybe up into that 1.5 grams per pound of body weight range. So what is that? That puts Casey as at 255?
Yeah, 255.
255 grams. So I would say his range maybe going like 170, 255, but I like going up towards the higher end of that for his goals because he's going for performance and muscle gain, to really try to make sure that that's topped off. Muscle glycogen is topped off also from eating carbs. But, he would have to get up pretty high into like the, 400 gram range. That don't quote me on that specific number for it to have any sort of negative implications for his kidneys or, other organs in the body. So I like going a little bit higher there.
Gotcha.
After a workout, it's not a bad idea to have 30 to 50 grams depending on how big of a person you are and what your goals are. But I think more throughout the day is going to be way more important. That's what kind of the data shows. You might get minimal extra gains from making sure right after that workout you get your protein.
Interesting, yeah, because it's always been like, your window, got to get it in.
And so if you have body composition and health gains, not really important to get it in that window. Because you're not like, I have to prepare for the next workout where you might have done an AM session and then you're going to do a PM session. Get it in right away.
Gotcha. That's good. Always goes back like, what's your goals and what are you training for?
Yeah, right? But I don't want to go broad and just say
right.
I want to give some specifics.
I like it. I guess real quick, what's an easy way to ensure that you're getting proper micronutrients?
I like to recommend if people are willing to eat some healthy meat, you can get a lot of really good micronutrients in meat, but also a wide range of different colors of veggies. So that's the easiest way to put it. Different colors is going to give you a wide range of micronutrients. I would definitely want somebody that's asking me a nutrition question to try to get it from a healthy protein source like grass-fed meat, wild-caught fish, stuff like that, and then different colors of veggies. I get a lot of questions about like green supplements, like, hey, I'm gonna take this green powder because it has all my micronutrients for the day, similar to taking just a vitamin, which is good if you absorb those nutrients. But some people's digestion is so screwed up that they aren't actually even going to absorb those nutrients. Some of them aren't bioavailable, meaning that your body doesn't actually like get all of the nutrients from it. And then some of them need to be taken with certain other foods. So like their example, like vitamin D is like a fat soluble vitamin. So you have to have it with a little bit of fat to be able to absorb your vitamin D. So when you're having vegetables, maybe cooking in a little bit of coconut oil or avocado oil or something like that is going to be a good way to absorb nutrients. Just make sure your digestion's in check. If you're having these vitamins and green powders, and if you're eating other crappy foods and not sleeping, your digestion's probably pretty bad. So it doesn't matter how much micronutrients you get in; it matters how much you absorb.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because if I can be taking all the micronutrients I want, but if my body's not absorbing it, then shoot, might as well just not even worry about it. On the kind of, I love what you talk about whenever we talk about meats. So the question from listener is, red meat or dairy, good or bad? Just in general, I guess meat and dairy is kind of the question. Right. But I think you're going to go into it, how you talk about, the difference between good meat and bad meat and stuff like that. So elaborate more on what I'm talking about.
I don't think you're supposed to do this on a podcast. Should we ask this question? Should we make this 2 parts? Should we make this whole nutrition, should we cut this into 2 parts?
We could.
We could dive into this a little bit more thoroughly and cut this into 2 parts. We're already at an hour.
Yeah, let's. We're almost to the bottom of this.
Sure.
So let's just
sure.
We'll just make this our last question. How about that?
We could dive into things. I do want to answer the last one super quickly.
Cool.
So red meat or dairy, good or bad? So this is something that I want to reference. One of the very first few things we said was you always have to see where someone's coming from and what are they trying to sell you is kind of my question. So I don't want to group red meat and dairy into the same boat. They're different. Let's talk dairy first because it's a little bit easier. I would say that dairy has a lot of good micronutrients in it, especially like dairy coming from a healthy cow, but some people don't handle it well. So I can give some specific examples. I don't handle dairy very well, and I'm very confident that it's the lactose found in dairy that I'm a little bit lactose intolerant. But besides that, I actually think that I handle dairy totally fine. So when we talk about milk, there's going to be lactose in there. That's one of the carbohydrates found in milk. When we talk about, some like cheeses or butter, certain cheeses don't actually have any lactose in them or have very, very minimal amounts. So like I handle that totally fine. Whereas, like butter has very, very, very minimal lactose in it because it's the fat from milk. It's not the carbohydrates. So with dairy, it's really just how you handle it. So to go a little bit further, like I said, we have a 14-month-old at home, and he gets milk multiple times a day. But you better believe we're getting him some very healthy milk. So he gets the organic A2 cows. So there's A1, A2 cows. A1 is more common, especially in the United States. They have a little bit different casein molecule that they create in their milk. So one of the proteins found in milk, whereas the A2 cows do not have that casein molecule. And there's, I forget the exact number, there's like in the 60s of different kinds of like protein found in milk. But that specific one has been found to give people a lot of issues with allergies. So we actually gave him a different kind of milk because we couldn't find the one that we were looking for, and he had a really bad reaction to it. So it was just that very specific kind of casein that he doesn't handle very well.
Interesting. Yeah, I had no idea about A1, A2 cows and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's just they're not as common. They're found I want to say Ireland and some other places out in Europe, but they're becoming more common because there is some data to back this up that the different casein, the type of casein that they create is actually easier digestible for humans.
Interesting.
And then when we say red meat, so we're going to separate those. Without diving very, very deeply into this, because I've gone down this rabbit hole so deep. Because I want to know, because I love red meat, I want to know if it's healthy for me to eat. First off, we have to differentiate between healthy red meat and unhealthy red meat. One of the biggest eye-openers for me, I lived in the Midwest up until, I want to say I was like 23 or something like that, or 24.
When you say Midwest, what area?
Chicago area.
Gotcha.
So out in Chicago. When I moved to Oklahoma, I saw farms in Illinois, but it was like not as common. So driving through Oklahoma, I was also driving a lot for my job. I drove through Texas and Oklahoma. You could literally look on the side of the road and you'd see 20 cows on like 50 acres in this like beautiful like green grass, and they're just like grazing, and you're like, wow, those cows look really happy. And then some specific places I remember driving through in Texas, you would see like 2,000 cows on like 20 acres, or I'm sorry, 2 acres is what I meant to say. 2,000 cows on like 2 acres, shoulder to shoulder. They're eating corn and soybeans. They're eating some foods that they were not meant to eat. And you can imagine that those cows that are shoulder to shoulder. Imagine if humans were like that with the freaking coronavirus going on. Like you could imagine one cow gets a disease and it spreads very, very, very quickly. They're not healthy cows. So we need to differentiate between, are you eating healthy red meat or are you eating unhealthy red meat? If they're grass-fed, free range, and they're a healthy cow, it's actually going to be great for you to eat the muscle tissue, the protein, but also the fat too of that healthy cow. And you also notice, have you ever noticed on a grass-fed meat compared to regular meat, there's not as much marbling, quote unquote. It's a leaner cow. You know what I mean? It's not an overweight, diseased cow.
Probably
so there's less fat.
Not as many hormones pumped into them, and probably not as much stress. And it sounds silly, but talking about like the whole kind of same thing we're talking about as far as stress levels and how well your body performs. Like if that cow isn't, if it's it's free range and lower stress, it's probably higher quality performance as a cow.
And it's not. I'm not really even judging farmers because it's a business. They're trying to make a cow grow as big as possible, as quick as possible, and that's a good way to do it. You can slaughter them for more meat earlier, but it's because they're gaining weight like crazy. They're eating foods they're not supposed to. So when we eat a healthy cow, the fat is actually really good for you. There's multiple reasons. The omega-3, omega-6 ratio, you should have pretty close to equal omega-3 to omega-6. That's why people take fish oil, is try to have more omega-3. omega-3s. Crappy vegetable oils have a ton of omega-6s. In our American diet these days, people are having way too much omega-6s and not enough omega-3s, and really bad stuff happens. So in that healthy cow, that's a good ratio. In that unhealthy cow, they're typically 15 to 1 or 30 to 1 omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. So it's basically like you're not getting any omega-3s and you're getting way too much omega-6s. And that's just one mechanism that's not healthy for humans to have that. So when we look at studies, and we look at the studies that are pulling, that many people pull from to say that red meat is bad, they're not differentiating between healthy meat and unhealthy meat. And it's also typically, most of them that I've seen, because I haven't really seen any that aren't these, is an epidemiology study. So epidemiology is like entire countries. When you take epidemiology studies, it's basically like me giving, you and a bunch of other people a survey and saying, hey, do you eat red meat? And then you check yes. And then you say, hey, give me your cholesterol numbers. And then you write down your cholesterol numbers. And give me your instances, family of heart disease. And it's literally that's what we're doing, is seeing okay, so you eat red meat and you have bad cholesterol numbers, which is a whole other conversation, which isn't really that indicative of your general health. So it's called healthy user bias. Is if you eat red meat because it's been demonized in our society, you probably don't exercise, you probably smoke, you probably drink. So of course you're going to be an unhealthy human. Whereas if we could differentiate and drop down into the healthy meat, and start to see that data, I think we'd see a lot of different data.
So would you call it healthy bias?
Healthy user bias.
So you're basically saying that they're not differentiating or considering all things around it. It's just asking, if A happens, does B happen, does C happen? Not how do you get through all that? Yeah,
one of the
frustrating.
One of the books I read really illustrated this very well. So most of this, as your GoPro, most of this came from this thing called the China study, which is a very old study, and I recommend anyone that is interested in diving into this to start to look up that. What they did is they looked at countries like China, the US, Canada. They looked at a bunch of different countries, and they were trying to see if red meat was correlated with heart disease. So in certain countries, it was. In other countries, it was not. When they published their information, they published only the countries that supported their hypothesis that had a correlation with red meat and with that. There's other countries where if you start to put the whole data in, there's no correlation. There's other countries that had a very strong correlation with higher instances of meat and then lower instances of heart disease, Japan, I want to say, was one of the examples. I'd have to look back at the data, but Japan eats a lot of fish, and it's usually wild-caught, healthy fish. And it's also in their society, eating meat is more of a luxury, so the richer, healthier people that are wanting to be healthy people eat a lot more meat. So, of course, if you're eating meat and it's viewed as healthy, then you're going to be exercising. You're going to be doing all the other healthy habits. And then it goes on to show that in this same time frame, they did another graph that it showed. It was super interesting. It was instances of heart disease and if someone owns a TV or not. And it was extremely strongly correlated. So, and they actually dove into this to see is there electromagnetic fields being pulsed out of the TV to see if it's giving people heart attacks.
Or really just people sit down and watch TV.
Exactly. So it was crazy. The data was so strongly correlated in comparison to meat eating, but they realized, oh, well, people that own a TV, maybe they just,
they sit around and
then people that don't need a TV are more active.
That's fascinating.
It's crazy.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so I encourage anyone that's interested in diving into that, dive into that type of stuff and know whether it's an epidemiology study that you're reading or looking at, or, a New York Times article about an epidemiology study.
Yeah.
Or know whether it's an actual study looking at 200 participants and the actual mechanism, they could control everything, and did these people eat more meat and what happened?
It kind of goes back to what we started off with is what are they trying to sell? That's a good point.
That's the whole. I don't want to sound like what's the word?
Conspiracy.
I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but a lot of those studies are funded by companies like Coca-Cola and PepsiCo, and they want there to be no correlation between sugar intake and being unhealthy and even as far as to say that producers of corn and soybean, they want it to be where carbs are more healthy for people, and it's just not the case.
Well, CrossFit in particular seems like they're kind of taking on the establishment and trying to kind of challenge that, which is cool to see. And I don't know, it's always fun to see the ruffles of big corporations versus maybe some smaller ones. But awesome, man. Well, I don't know about you. I think probably good to wrap it up here.
Yeah, sure. We could do more diving into other stuff. I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting for me, and I hope other people are finding it interesting. Maybe we should do like a follow-up episode on some nutrition stuff. We'll kind of get some feedback, and if we can dive deeper into stuff. Yeah, man, it's awesome. Any final thoughts?
I'd love to geek out further on some of this stuff. If anyone has any questions, we can chat, and then feel free to email us with looking for that sleep suggestion PDF or anything like that. Happy to send that out. We're here to help.
Love it, man. Awesome. Well, stay tuned, guys.